August 25th, 2008. The sun had yet to rise when the dispatcher's line began to ring off the hook in the quaint, safe town of Springfield, Georgia. Things rarely happened here. A call about a drunk driver on occasion, a robbery here and there, or perhaps someone in the wealthy part of town was afraid of something going bump in the night, whether it was a branch against their window or a critter on their porch. But when the dispatcher answered the call, they quickly realized just how different this call was from the normal. Aside from ragged breathing, there was no answer when they asked where the emergency was. After some garbled gasps for air, two words came out. It was clear they were painful to say.
Help, please.
It came out as two separate words in between panicked breathing. The dispatcher clung to the phone, asking repeatedly what was wrong. The woman on the other end only responded,
Gun, shot.
It took 6 minutes for the dispatcher to understand what was happening on the other end of the line. The woman had been brutally shot in the face, and her husband had been as well. She didn't know if her son had also been shot, but she feared the worst. When law enforcement arrived, the scene before them was something out of a nightmare. But it wasn't the brutality of the killings that would shock them the most. It was the secrets they would soon uncover about the picture-perfect family of victims. This is the story of the Height family murders, a scandal that provides a glimpse into a world of secrets, greed, lust, and lies, all hidden behind the walls of mansions with manicured lawns. The Golden Family. Everyone in Springfield, Georgia, knew who the Height family was. In fact, most people in Effingham County knew who they were. Philip Height, who was 59 in 2008, was a prominent real estate developer with millions to his name. He and his wife, Linda, were a church-going, charitable, compassionate couple who were pillars of their community. There was hardly an event that they didn't attend, and they were the first to donate to benefits and send well wishes to those in need. When interviewed, many people were quick to say that Phil was the best friend or business partner you could ask for. He was genuine, loyal, and honest. He and Linda did all they could to instill these traits into their three sons, Chris, Craig, and Carrie. Carrie, the youngest son of the family, was the first to follow his father into the prominent family real estate business. In 2008, at just 32 years old, he seemed to have it all. He had married his high school sweetheart, Robin, when they were fresh out of school. They shared three wonderful kids together, who were 10, 7, and 3. From the outside, they appeared to be a happy, flourishing couple who had found their soulmate early and built a life and family together. But as the recession began to press on the family business, that facade started to slip away. To make enough to support Robin and the kids, Carrie began to work more and more hours. It reached a point where, according to Robin, he was hardly ever home, and the two began to drift apart from one another. That's when Philip entered the picture in a brand new way. But it wasn't the Philip you're thinking of. This is Philip Jr., or as he more commonly went by, Craig. Craig, the middle child of the Heights, was 41 years old in 2008. While Carrie was working in the family business, married with 3 kids, Craig was in a very different spot. Craig was in the wake of a divorce, paying child support for the 2 children who lived with his ex-wife. He was unemployed and collecting disability due to a back injury. Self-described as the black sheep of the family, he didn't quite fit in with everyone else. But that seemed to work just right for Robin. The Height family was incredibly close, spending a lot of weekends and dinners together. In the absence of her husband, Robin began to form a deeper bond with Craig. While her husband worked, Robin found herself lusting after his brother. Hidden from the family one night, Robin confessed to Craig that she had strong feelings for him, feelings that went beyond that of a brother and sister-in-law. Craig shared her feelings, and the sparks between them ignited into a full-blown affair. Little did they know just how public their affair would soon be, or what tragedy it would lead to. But Robin couldn't keep the affair a secret for long. Just 2 weeks into it, she confessed to Carrie that she was sleeping with his brother. She claimed that she wasn't in love with him, she was infatuated with him. Carrie was heartbroken. He allegedly told Robin that if she was going to have an affair, he wished she had done it with anyone other than his brother. He had been betrayed not only by his wife and the mother of his children, but by the older brother who was meant to protect him. Ultimately, Robin was the only woman he had ever loved in his life, and so he told her that he wanted to repair their relationship, no matter the cost. Tragically, he was never given the chance. Robin and Craig continued on with their affair even after Carrie learned of it. Fighting began between the family members when they all learned of the affair. Philip, the patriarch, took vows and his family's reputation very seriously. He was terrified that the townspeople would learn of the affair. On more than one occasion, Philip confronted both Robin and Craig, trying to force them to stop their inappropriate relationship. Just weeks before the horrific day in August, Philip took Robin aside and begged her to stop the affair. The two got into a heated argument that ended with Robin storming away from the house. Around the same time, Philip threatened to take Craig out of the family will if he continued ruining his brother's marriage. But none of this was enough to stop Robin and Craig's relationship. In fact, it almost seemed to heighten it. The two began to sneak away to a rural hunting cabin about 30 minutes from Springfield, where they could carry on their affair without worrying about the prying eyes of their family, or so they thought. 2 days before police arrived at a brutal murder scene, Robin and Craig awakened at the cabin where they were conducting their affair to the sound of a helicopter flying low above them. When they looked outside, they could see a helicopter hovering just over the cabin, visibly taking pictures of their cars parked in the driveway. Philip and Carrie had hired a pilot friend to fly to the cabin and take photos as proof of the affair. Whether this was for a lawsuit or for Carrie's own use is unknown. What is known, however, is that everyone involved was furious. Craig was furious his family would spy on him. Philip, the father, was furious his family was falling apart. Carrie was furious that his own wife and brother had betrayed him. When Robin arrived home, she and Carrie got into a horrific argument. Carrie stormed out, telling her that he was staying at his parents' house to put some space between them and think some things over. That was the last time Robin and Carrie would see each other, because in the early morning hours of August 25th, law enforcement raced through rural Springfield to answer a horrific 911 call. As the sheriff pulled up to the house, his heart sank. It was the house of Philip and Linda Height. He had known the couple since the 70s and they were close friends. He knew that there had been shots inside and with them. He knew it was likely that his friends were dead. But none of the officers could have anticipated just how absurd the crime scene behind the Heights doors was going to be. The scene. Linda was the first person to be discovered by law enforcement. She was just barely clinging to consciousness. She held a piece of fabric to her blood-soaked face and neck, where she had been shot at close range. Her phone was curled in her bloody fingers, where it had remained since she first managed to dial 911. EMTs quickly rushed Linda to the hospital in nearby Savannah, unsure if she would be able to survive the massive blood loss and the damage to her face and neck. Upstairs, they found something even more distressing. Philip had been shot in the face. From the way his body was laying and the placement of the injuries, it seemed that he had been staring his killer directly in the eyes. Just before he was shot, criminal investigators believed that he pulled the covers up over his head in a futile attempt to protect himself from the fatal blast that took his life. Just down the hall, Carrie suffered a similar fate. It seemed that he had been asleep in bed when he was fatally shot at close range. Investigating this horrific scene had law enforcement on edge, not solely because of the death and destruction around them, but because they feared that they were walking into a trap. The entire house had been doused in gasoline. At any moment, they feared the perpetrator could toss down a match and set the entire scene and the officers within it ablaze. They had no idea who had done this, and the fact that they could still be lurking, ready to strike, had them on high alert. After some thorough searching, they learned that the killer had already fled the scene. Fortunately for them, the killer had left plenty of clues behind. Firstly, it was clear to law enforcement that the scene had been staged. Furniture had been flipped and possessions had been scattered around in an attempt to make it look like a robbery had taken place. Yet nothing had been taken from the house. Money, car keys, electronics, and all valuables had been left behind. As the sun began to rise, news of the murders spread like wildfire. The townspeople were terrified, fearing that a killer was on the loose. After 3 days, law enforcement announced that they believed the public was safe and that the murders were an isolated incident. They had many reasons to believe that. For starters, though a window was broken to make it appear as if someone broke in, a key was discovered still turned inside the lock to the back door. It was what the family referred to as the outdoor key, a key that they hid outside in case anyone ever got locked out. The killer using the key to access the house made it a near certainty that they were close enough with the family to know of its existence. And then there was the way the family members were shot. It was estimated by law enforcement that Carey was shot first asleep in his bed, which awakened Philip, who was shot immediately after. Linda was shot on her way back from the bathroom. All of the victims had been shot at an incredibly close range, estimated to be a mere 2 feet. Linda and Philip had undoubtedly stared the shooter in the eyes. Miraculously, Linda was still alive. Officers were hopeful that she would have the answers they needed, that she had seen the murderer. But they were going to have to wait. Linda was in the hospital healing with bandages over her face and her jaw wired shut. In her journal during her long recovery, she wrote that she had smelled hell and that it smelled like gunpowder and gasoline. When officers were finally able to speak with Linda, she had some unfortunate news for them. All she could remember was that the shooter was tall and slender and that he had shot at her as soon as she emerged from the bathroom. Police pressed her for answers, asking if she believed the shooter could be someone she knew, perhaps one of her sons or nephews. Linda vehemently denied this. Yet when Craig entered her room to visit her for the first time after the attacks, her heart rate skyrocketed from 98 to 140. Officers claimed that she was shaking when she saw him, though to this day, she denies that ever happened. Craig was soon at the center of the investigation. He told the police that he hadn't had an affair with Robin. Unfortunately for him, Robin had openly admitted it to police in the wake of the shooting. Craig claimed that he was at the family cabin at the time that the shooting occurred, though he had no one that could back up his claims. Inside his truck, law enforcement discovered shotgun shells in his car, but did not discover a gun matching the 12 gauge that was used in the murders of his father and brother. However, in interrogations, Craig claimed out of nowhere that his 12 gauge shotgun and boots had been stolen out of the family home. To law enforcement, this was incredibly suspicious. Even more suspicious was Craig's results on the lie detector test. When he was asked if he was holding a shotgun when his parents were shot, the test indicated his no response was untruthful. When he was asked if he shot his parents, he said that if he did, he had no recollection of it. Craig was set to inherit $3.5 million from his father's life insurance policy. He was having an affair with his brother's wife. He had a clear motive, no alibi, and a history of being untruthful. But law enforcement were forced to let him go. They had yet to get the evidence they needed to convict him for murdering his brother and father. For months, all they could do was keep tabs on Craig. 4 months after the tragic murders, he moved in with Robin and began to drive his dead brother's truck, sleep in his dead brother's bed, and sleep with his dead brother's wife. The two made plans to get married and move away from Effingham, where everyone's eyes were on them, suspecting them of committing a heinous crime with one another over greed and lust. Yet Craig's family was supportive of him. Linda didn't believe for a second that Craig had killed anyone or shot at her, and Chris, the oldest brother, felt the same. When Craig was finally arrested 9 months after the murders, his family was left to grieve all over again. Craig vehemently denied that he had laid a hand on his brother. Robin, who had once been supportive of him, turned on him, even testifying against him at trial. Many thought that perhaps that had been her plan all along. The trial was a heated one. There was no hard evidence linking Craig to the crime. There were no fingerprints, no weapons, no proof that he was at the scene the night the murders had occurred. But it seems that the affair and probable cause was just too much for the jury to overlook. In addition, it came to light that Craig had looked at land with a realtor prior to the murders, claiming that he was going to come into some money soon. That wasn't the only shocking information to emerge from the trial, however. As it was just getting started, Robin was arrested for allegedly threatening a witness. She was charged with tampering with a witness, but due to a gag order on the case, there is no clear information on who she threatened or how she threatened them. However, it was the public's first real indication that Robin could manipulate, threaten, and intimidate others. Ultimately, Craig was deemed guilty by the jury and was sentenced to 2 lifetime sentences in prison, as well as an additional 85 years for the attempted murder of his mother. Craig has since maintained his innocence, and his family remains supportive of him. Meanwhile, Robin has found herself in the spotlight a few times in the wake of the murders. In April of 2011, Robin and her new boyfriend were accused of making threatening phone calls to his ex-girlfriend's boyfriend. At one point, it's alleged that Robin threatened to drive over and kill the boyfriend herself. Later in 2011, Robin moved to South Carolina, where it is believed she remains to this day. Yet all these years later, questions still linger regarding her involvement in Craig's guilt. Did Craig really kill his family to be with Robin and steal the family fortune? Or was he perhaps a pawn in someone else's game? Let us know in the comments what you think about this case. Remember to subscribe. If you like this video, you most definitely like the story of Els Van Doorn, an experienced skydiver whose death was caused by sabotage parachutes, leading to the conviction of her friend Els Klottermans in a love triangle-fueled murder case. Keep sleuthing, armchair detectives. Until we meet again.